Recording starting. All right, y'all. So, good morning or good afternoon, depending on the time zone that you are entering. This is still season 3, episode. I don't know. I think I lost count. I have the wonderful Alise as our guest. And Alise, one of the reasons why I was like, I have to interview you is one, because when I tried this a few years ago, do you remember how that went? Do you remember?
Um, I feel like we had I think it was like on Facebook, and then we were having technical difficulties.
Listen, yeah, so 2020, it had to be 2020, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have I don't know what it was, a podcast or like a show or something online, and it just didn't go anyway. But we're here now, okay?
Maybe.
We are here now, and so I was like, I got to bring you back. I think you have a lot of just experience and you're like really, really smart, right? I always say that, you know that. And so when it comes to like education, I just want your viewpoints on education, or when it comes to like the career field or the industry that you chose. I want to know why. I think
Mhm.
you're a really intriguing person. So without further ado, please introduce, yourself to the people, please.
Yeah. So I'm Alise. Career-wise, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I work as a therapist primarily with
Mm.
couples and individuals. I've also done, families and little ones as well. But I'm all adults right now. Um,
Mm.
I am a student. I previously worked with Akila, and I'm just here. I just do, like to have fun and do things that interest me, and so that's where I'm at.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, licensed clinical social worker.
Yes.
Why that feel?
So it was completely by accident. Funny enough, I had no intentions of going into social work.
Hmm.
When I went to undergrad, I actually started as, I want to say, a criminology major, um, and
Complete
then
opposite.
and then I switched to psychology. I had a
Mm.
double minor in conflict resolution, and then conflict analysis and resolution, and gender and women's studies. And then my very last semester, I needed an
Hmm.
extra elective, and I just took a social work class. And I was like, oh, actually, I think I'm supposed to be in here. Like, I love this. And
Hmm.
so I scrapped all my grad school plans and just on a whim started applying to social work programs. And so I went and got my master's in social work, and been doing that ever since.
You said that you're a student. What are you in school? What are you in school for again?
So currently, I am pursuing a doctorate back in psychology. Um, I genuinely enjoy learning. I
Hmm.
cannot say I have a good, like an amazing reason for going back to school, other than I really do enjoy it.
Hmm.
I find it really stimulating to just learn new things and be able to
Yeah.
apply those. And it's still relevant to what I'm doing. I still work in mental health,
Yeah.
so I can always learn more, do more. So
Hmm. The reason why I say it again is because I feel like, so Elisa is one of my former co-workers, and every time I turned around, I'm looking at her signature in the bottom of her email, and it's all these credentials. I'm like, when did you get this certification? When did you go back to school? Very intriguing. I know how I was when I went back to school, and it was just like headache. I was just like, oh, please let this be over with. And you just always seem to enjoy it. So kudos to you for that. Kudos to you for that. Um, so licensed clinical social worker,
mhm.
um, majoring in getting a doctorate in psychology.
Yeah.
What are your future plans? Like, what do you want to do with that doctorate? Do you want to like publish any findings, any research? start a YouTube channel? What's the plans for that?
Yeah, I go back and forth all the time. I'm
Mm,
actually like in process now of trying to really pin down my dissertation.
mm,
Something I'm sure that'll come up is I love to read. It is one of my favorite
facts.
things to do. Um, and I also really enjoy horror films. And so right now I'm looking at some intersections between empathy and reading,
Mm,
kind of literacy habits, and how much you read affects your ability to empathize and your emotional intelligence.
mm,
Bibliotherapy is like a really big thing that I enjoy. Um, and there's, the same thing on the side with like movies. There's cinema therapy.
mm,
There's lots of different artistic and narrative therapies. And so trying to find ways to get my research around things that I'm genuinely
mm,
interested in. So I got a little time to figure it out. And
mm.
that's kind of my focus right now.
Okay, thank you. And because I know that you're an avid reader, and I know this because Alise, for the few years that we did work together, she had a um part of our job, right, or our role. We had to we sat at a desk speaking to customers or participants, and Alise would actually be reading a book and doing the job. And I'm like, how are you doing these things simultaneously? Like, I was like, okay, she's brilliant. So, because I know that you're an avid reader, what is it that you're reading now?
Oof, that's like a hard question because I'm always picking up and like putting down books. Right now, I'm actually reading a few like advanced copies, so they're books that haven't come out yet. One
Mm,
that I just got that I'm really excited about is called Your Favorite Scary Movie, and it is a history of the Scream franchise, which is like one of my favorite franchises.
mm-hmm,
I just started this book called Black Owned, which is kind of about the history of Black entrepreneurs, back when we really weren't allowed to own things and
mm,
create our own businesses.
mm,
Um, and then one is called Mastery of Monsters, and it is uh, like a dark academia.
mm,
It is by this Black Canadian author that I really like, LaSalle Samberry, which I think comes out in June. Um,
mm,
so I think those are probably the big ones that I'm reading right
mm. All three.
now. Those aren't the only ones, but I guess
Alise, how
I
many
need
are you reading?
variety. Like for me, I at any given time will be reading like 5 to 10 books, and it's
See?
because I really enjoy variety. So if I just
Mm,
sit and look at the same thing forever, I get bored. So I'll actually read like 50 pages and put it down, and then pick up a different book and read 50 pages and then put it down and
see?
like cycle through that.
Listen, completely opposite. I have to read this one book all the way through and then pick up another one. Maybe one or two at the same time, but any more than that is like overload for my brain.
That is really common. I feel like it's like one or the other. I know some people that they can only do multiple books if it's in different formats. So they'll do like
Mm,
one print book, one digital, like an ebook, and then one audiobook at
mm,
the same time, but they
okay.
can't do multiple books in the same format at the same time.
Mm, never thought of it like that. Never thought of it like that. But I love that. I think reading is definitely fundamental. There's a lot that you learn, by, and I think actually reading a book. So not even like the audio form. I'm talking about like flipping through the pages. I think we need to do more of it. I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
You'll never catch me without a book.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Um, how does a person, I want to go back to like what you do professionally.
Yeah.
How does someone know that they may need counseling or therapy? Like, what are some signs for them?
I think that people, they come to counseling for a lot of different reasons. There are people I think that very clearly, they're in crisis. They're extremely depressed or extremely anxious. They're, having difficulty managing or functioning in their day to day. And so that,
Mm,
can typically be pretty clear.
mhm,
But some people, it's a lot more subtle. It's not being fulfilled in your life. It's
Mm,
kind of always being bored, not really feeling like there's anything that you really want or that really makes you happy or that you're really invested in.
mm,
Um, a lot of people come by way of difficult family relationships. I think that is one of the biggest
mm,
factors is, you know, trying to unpack things from when they were being raised, now that they're becoming parents, and kind of seeing they don't want to repeat those cycles.
mm.
Or, they're getting into relationships for the first time and they're realizing that the people that they had around them growing up did not give them a good model of what a relationship would look like or how to
Yes.
communicate. Um, and some people, they really just want to really do a deeper dive into themselves. They just want
Mm,
some kind of reflection and more self-awareness and emotional awareness. And
mm,
so I don't think you necessarily have to have a problem,
mm-hmm,
to go to therapy. People
mm,
come into it with their own goals, and that's really the focus is what are you looking to get out of therapy? And then can we make that work?
mm, hmm. Yeah, I know, like for me, it was something traumatic that sent me to therapy just
Mm,
because I felt like the people around me didn't have the skills. I don't know, I just felt like they didn't have the skills to kind of handle what I was going through.
yeah.
I don't know why I didn't feel comfortable with just like having the conversations, but I was just like, hey, I've never done therapy before. Let me try. And I'm glad that I did because it has definitely opened my eyes to myself and just other people. Like it has broadened my horizons, I would say. For
Good.
sure. For sure. In your field, right? So in your field, let's say you have a girl who is 16 and she's like, I want to do what you do. What advice would you give her knowing what you know at this point?
I think when possible,
Mhm.
talking to people that work in the field. Mental health is a huge, huge field, and social work
Mm,
is, in my opinion, other people might disagree. I think social work is an even bigger field.
mm,
Mental health is just one part of that. And
mm,
when I was young, something that I thankfully had an opportunity to do, my mom, she's worked in public schools for a long time. And so she actually was able to speak with like her school counselor. And the school psychologists that they had, and they let me like come in and sit with them and talk with them and
oh, good.
like kind of shadow and see what they were
Mm,
doing. And
mhm,
same when I was an undergrad, the professors that I had, a lot of them were actively working in the field, and so there
mm,
were opportunities that you could go into a research lab and actually take part in helping to design experiments and looking at data if research is what you're interested in. Or I was able to go to my professor's practice one time and see what that was like. And so there's
mm,
all these different ways to come into the field, and I think getting an idea of what it is that you're really interested in and then finding
mm.
something that aligns with that is kind of your best bet.
Hmm, okay. It's good to have people in your space that are doing what you want to do. So I'm glad that your mom made that connection for you. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did know what I wanted to do. I just didn't have anybody around that did anything similar to what I wanted to do
Yeah.
at all. So it's good that you had that. Um, were you gonna say something?
I was because I think a lot of people, especially now, everything is online. Um,
Yeah.
and I always honestly warn people away from online spaces being your first look into something. A lot of times
Mm,
when people come to online spaces, they're coming because they're struggling in finding a community. And so they don't have a place to like complain or to, talk about the issues that they're having. And even me working in the field for years now, I can go into like certain online spaces and be like, wow, it seems like it really sucks in here. You guys are
it's
not
very
helping me out.
disheartening. This is
Um,
disheartening.
and so I think it but then, I have lots of friends and colleagues that work in the field and are,
Mhm.
doing great things and really enjoying it. And not to say it is not an easy field by any means. I don't want to give
Mhm.
anyone the impression that it's butterflies and rainbows. Um, but I think that sometimes online spaces can skew really negative and can give
Mm.
a certain look to the field that I personally don't feel is accurate.
Mhm.
Not to say obviously that people don't have those experiences, but that is not the only experience.
You know what? What you're saying makes me think about uh, just social media in general, because you know how sometimes people they see a video or like a post and they are so harsh. Like the comment section is like ridiculous. I think people get this type of like courage, or they feel no one's going to see me, or I can just say whatever I want to say. So that makes sense. Don't let online be your first go-to when trying to figure out if you are interested in something. That makes sense. Okay. Do you have any just stick out or like memorable stories about a client? And it doesn't have to be like, please, don't give too many details, but is there like a memorable story that you had maybe from like when you first started, or like a disgruntled client, or one that made you laugh, like anything of that sort?
Yeah, I feel like it's really easy for some of those like negatives to come to mind, like, oh, the first time someone ever yelled at me, or those times. But honestly, I feel like the things that tend to stick out to me most are
Uh-huh.
clients that didn't believe they were going to be okay. And then at the end, we having sessions all this time, and then it's like, oh, we don't have anything to talk about.
Oh.
It's like, oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
We don't have anything to talk about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so kind of watching clients be more confident in themselves that they're okay and
Aw.
that they can move on to the next step. And um, I think when you come into therapy, you can form a very close connection. This is a person that
Mhm.
obviously you're telling really intimate things about yourself, things that you
Mhm.
may not speak to other people about. And so
Mhm.
letting go of that can be hard. And so
Mm.
sometimes I find I have to kind of like push you out the door a little bit. Not that I don't want to see you again, but you don't need me
Yeah.
anymore. And
Aw.
that I think is like a really great moment when it's like, you're doing great and
Aw.
you can go about your life and have a great time. And especially when I used to work with teens and kids more often, that was
Mhm.
always just like an amazing moment when like one of my kids would graduate, or they're moving on to their next step, or it's nice to have those
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I can definitely see that there is like a progression in the client therapist relationship. And it may get to a point where you're just like, well, we don't have anything to talk about. We revisited your goals and you're doing good. So um that made me think of another question.
Hmm.
I would often hear a lot of people say, I ain't going to therapy. I ain't going to counseling. Like, I don't need it. I can talk to my friends. I can go to church. And you'll say, well, have you ever tried it? Like, is that something that you ever tried? And they may say, yeah, I tried it once and it didn't work. So what do you say to someone who was open to therapy at one point in time, but then they got to the point where they're just like, it doesn't work. I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
What do you
You
say?
know, I I think there can be two pieces. One, um, I think that people really have to be ready to come to therapy. A
Mm.
lot of times I find clients that will come because someone is kind of making them. Like my girlfriend said, if I don't come to therapy, like we're
It's
done
over.
kind of deal.
Oh,
And,
oh.
you know, while it can be a really great thing, if
Mhm.
it's not something that you're invested in,
Mhm.
the odds are it's not going to do much for you because
Mm.
therapy isn't something that your therapist does for you. it
Mm,
is a relationship. And so both of us have to be active and engaged in what we're doing and believe in what we're doing.
mm,
And the other piece I think is really the approach. There are an endless number of approaches
mm,
to therapy. My
mm.
approach is not like a lot of my friends or my
Yeah,
colleagues' approach. And that
yeah,
works for us because that doesn't fit with my personality or their personality.
yeah,
And that's something I go over with all clients when they come in is like, hey, so this is the type of approach that I have.
yeah,
What are
yeah.
you looking for? Is that a good fit for
Mhm,
you? Because I'm not going to
mm.
be the therapist for everybody.
Yeah.
I've been to therapy myself in the past. I've had great experiences, and I've had some where I'm like, oh, 2 sessions, I'm good. I don't need to come back.
Listen.
It's not for me. And that's not to say like
Whew.
they're a bad therapist. They just
Yeah,
aren't the one for me.
yeah. I had to get to a point where I realized that I learned, like, what type of person or personality or, like, approach that was for me because I have definitely gone to a few sessions and I'm just like, we can end this. We
Yeah.
seriously, like, not even to be disrespectful, but this is just what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? Like, I could have stayed asleep for all of this. So, I definitely understand that. So, you're saying just if someone is open to doing the work, then and open t and if they know that just the first person that you meet, the first therapist that you work with may not be a good fit, if they're open to those 2 things, then they're in a go?
Yeah. And I think
Okay.
also a piece of it is realistic expectations.
Mm,
There's sometimes I'll meet with a client, once a week for a month, and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm not better now," and it's like, "Yeah, I have seen you for a total of 3 hours,
give it some
ever."
time.
Um, and kind of therapy is just one part of the week.
Mm,
If you're coming into therapy and, we can have a great time for an hour and, talk about a lot and get a lot done. But if
mhm.
that's where it stops, if once you walk out the door, it's like, oh, I'm out of therapy. I don't need to do anything different until I come back. Nothing changes. The real work honestly happens in your day to day life and being
Ooh,
able to take things
yes.
from session and apply
Mhm.
them and use them. Um,
Whew.
and that's work that I'm not there with you for. And
Mm,
a piece I think in the honesty is, and me too, I'm this is not this is not just like a client thing. I think this is just a human thing,
mhm.
is really being honest with ourselves about what are we doing. Because I can say, oh yeah, I'm trying, like every day I'm trying to do blah blah blah, but then when we start talking about, okay, well, did you do this? Well, no, I was tired, and oh no, because I had something else to do. And
Yeah.
you know being realistic about what
Mhm.
am I doing on my day to
See.
day to make this a better life for myself.
Mhm. And those are things that you as a person are only gonna know if you're doing it. You know, it's like you can say, "Oh, it didn't work," but you know that when that therapist suggested certain things or came to a realization with you and said, "Hey, you need try to put these things into practice, or this is your homework." You knew you weren't gonna do it. You don't want yeah. Anywho, so so I understand that. I definitely do. Um, what would be some if you had to like maybe sum up a word of encouragement for young girls or young women, um, what would it be?
Oh, you're gonna ask me easy questions now? No.
Ooh.
You know, um, I think one of those like cliches is, you know, today is always the first day of the rest of your life. Like, I
Mm.
could have had a terrible yesterday. I could have had a terrible
Speak,
yesteryear.
Alise. Speak,
But,
speak.
every day you have an opportunity to start creating a
Mhm.
life that you want. And it's not
Mm.
easy by any
Yeah.
means, but it's never too late to do something or change something. When I was in undergrad, and I went to college like a little early. Not, I wasn't like a tiny kid, but I was pretty young when I started college,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember my sophomore year. I was 17, um,
See?
and there were people in my classes that like graduated high school before my parents were born, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like I want to do this with my life, and my life isn't over, um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's is really never too late to
Mm.
do that thing that you want to do.
I love that. Thank you. If someone is seeking your services, how can they get in contact with you?
So I actually work through a group practice, and at
Mm-hmm.
this moment I am full, so I am not taking new
Ooh.
clients. Um, but I'm also a very cost conscious lady,
Okay.
and I always think if clients want to pursue therapy first, finding out like what is it that I'm looking for in a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want someone that looks like me? Do I want someone that has expertise in a certain area, in a certain
Mm-hmm.
approach? And then looking for someone based on those.
Mm.
Because I do think, it is unfortunate having a bad first impression of therapy
Yeah.
is a turnoff for a lot of people, and they're not really willing to give it another try. Um,
Yeah.
but if I know what it is that like I want, then I can easily, or not easily, but easier find what I'm looking for. And then,
Okay.
I get on that insurance website, who takes my insurance?
Hello.
And then I start
Okay.
looking through their websites, is
Mm.
seeing if we're a good match.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Well, y'all heard she's full, but she but when she is accepting clients, I'll put her information or her group's information if she will allow in the section in the description. And if you so choose, you can get in contact with her. Any last words for the people, Miss Alise?
Um, mm, I don't know. It feels like I should say something like touching or wonderful. I don't know. I guess maybe a small thing is do something every day just for you. I think that
Mm,
that's such a big thing that gets lost. And I see people that are like overwhelmed. And even if it's
mm,
2 minutes, like I got 2 minutes while I'm brushing my teeth to put a face mask on, I'm going to do it for me because it's something for me.
mm.
Do something every day just for you.
That's a word. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. Bye. Bye. Okay, we're good and we're out. Thank you, Elise.
Ooh.
How have you been?
Oof.